The Seventh Seal, directed by Ingmar Bergman from 1957. Synopsis. Death literally walks the land in medieval Sweden. Recently returned from the Crusades, we are introduced to disillusioned knight Antonius Block and his squire Jans, discovering a plague-scarred world, making their way home. Exhausted and relaxing on a beach, death itself appears to Antonius. It would seem at this point the end has come for the two, but the knight challenges death to a game of chess in hopes to beat death. This amuses death. He takes up the challenge, and thus we get one of the most iconic scenes in cinema. After that, we're introduced to a second group of characters. It's a traveling troupe of actors, young Joff, Mia, and their infant son Mikkel, along with fellow actor and manager Scott. Here we are introduced to a pastoral image of medieval life, but in between making the towns, making dates. We see that Joff's has images and visions that he gets that other people don't see. It's kind of left to our own devices what that's all about. Yeah. Then back to Block and Johns. They're continuing their journey home to Antonius Block's wife, who I guess lives in a castle. And they're in this journey. They come across rotting corpses, abandoned churches, talk of ominous omens of darkness and death, and two-headed cows and horses eating one another. Just general end times sort of things going on. A young woman is going to be put to the torch because she's been accused of a witch, which is something that would happen in medieval Europe. Antonius, while at one of these abandoned churches on his way back home, starts like spilling his guts to a priest. He thinks about his disillusionment and worldview and the emptiness and meaninglessness of this world that he finds himself in. But it turns out it's just death sitting there waiting to get some sweet tips on how to beat him in chess. They come across a man named Ravan, who apparently was the one who inspired Antonius to head out to the Holy Lands to crusade. And now that same man is caught up in raping and robbing his way across this now plague-ridden land. John's the squire. He breaks up one of these rapes of a servant girl, who then he takes onto his own services, I guess, on their way back. At this point, our whole cast of characters are now in the same town, along with a procession of, I guess, was it flagellants? Flatulence. Yeah. Thank you. And there's blacksmiths' wives who like getting banged by actors, and some more doom and gloom. Joff, the actor, he gets a rough time at the local public house after Scat takes off with the blacksmith's wife. And Ravan, feeling like shit after getting slapped around by Johns, takes it out on this poor, nice actor fellow. Anyway, eventually we get our actors, our knights, our squire all together, and Antonius kind of decides he's going to protect this family, and they're welcome to join him at his castle to help ride out this whole plague business. So on that final leg, we get a witch burning, death knells of a poor plagued bastard, death becomes a lumberjack, some good old-fashioned table flips, a reunion, a final supper, and again, another one of those most famous shots in all film history type of things. So RJ, I'll let you start. What did you think of The Seventh Seal?
You're going to let me start?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm generous that way.
Man, that's pretty nice, Jarrett. I think this movie rules. This movie's really fucking good. I like it a lot. It might be my favorite Bergman, although admittedly I've only seen about a handful. I haven't seen Persona, but based on the short write-up on that, I feel like that's my kind of jam as well.
Yep.
So I haven't seen that one yet, but I did watch the long version of Fanny and Alexandra once. So I think I'm pretty much a Bergman authority. This movie's fucking awesome. It's got, like you said, like great images. I think the story is really good. I think a lot of the conversations they have about like death and religion and like the meaning of life and sorrow and horror and stuff like that, it's all like super relevant today. Like I feel like it's just like timeless conversations that people have had forever and people will have forever. So like that kind of stuff really resonates with me. I'll go like I think even just like the way it opens, I think is amazing. Where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like there's like with the clouds, like the heavens open up, and then there's that like bird on a rope, and it's just like, oh, like
Oh,
I
but
think that's
but what about those really nice perfunctory opening credits?
oh yeah, yeah that also
Which is like the thing that like Woody Allen just like uses and
stole.
abuses for the rest of his days.
I one time watched a like bonus feature Woody Allen thing, and he was saying that he did steal a lot of Bergman stuff, like especially later day Bergman, like use of colors like red and stuff like that. I think it might have been Persona he was talking about, or it could have been
Yeah.
Fanny and Alexandra at certain scenes. But like, I think Woody Allen is pretty open with that. Actually, no, you know what it was? I was watching the bonus features to Wild Strawberries and Woody Allen was in there, and he was talking about how he just stole a lot of Bergman style. So, so fuck you, Woody Allen.
Back to
Um,
the film.
back to the film. No, yeah. I think this movie is just really good. Like, uh, I don't know. Come as a as raised a young Catholic boy, I feel like a lot of this stuff is very personal to me, and it's just real life, Jarrett. It's real life and God in the heavens.
Huh.
I have a lot of individual things to say too, but I don't
Okay.
know if you wanna
Well,
if
you
you
can
wanna
go.
get your say
Yeah,
in
well,
or.
we've been back and forth a bit. Yeah. So I guess the first thing I wrote here was back in black and white in a language and land I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, I guess like overall, my impression of this movie is that it doesn't really feel like a movie at all, and I mean that in a good way.
Hmm.
Like it's like I feel like if like Max von Sydow is almost a detraction in the movie because I know he's a movie star, and I
Hmm.
know that it's like, oh, he's an actor, and like everything else in this movie just seems like, oh, this is real, like this has actually
Yeah.
happened or happening.
Hmm.
And but it's like, so like I don't know how any director can really achieve that so well.
Hmm.
And it's like this movie just does. To me, it's like it's sort of this movie kind of perfectly captures like what the Criterion Collection is. Like I couldn't think
Yeah.
of like a more like perfect candidate for the Criterion Collection. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so let's see, going along here. It kind of falls into the like realm of like one of my favorite subgenres, of which there's not enough, and that's medieval horror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, there's just something about that particular like that era. Like I guess we're talking like what is this 14th, 15th century Europe,
Hmm.
um, and just the whole idea of like all these like people living in a world without electricity, which just means like there's no light. Like so you're living in a world of torches and flame,
Hmm.
and like when darkness is actual darkness, and I guess the whole thought process of people like when you had spare time where you weren't spending like every waking moment of your life trying to just survive and kind of move on with your day, and try and
Yeah.
go to sleep and hopefully not be killed while sleeping because somebody could come along and kill you in your sleep, and there's like not like there's really detectives around investigating your death accurately,
Hmm.
and like so when people are like just making by and they stare off into the darkness, like what do they see, what do they
Hmm.
imagine are out there, and then that goes into like sort of these wonderful sort of like religious paintings of like demons and stuff like that exist. And whenever I see those type of paintings, I always kind of imagine like, oh, people might actually think this is what's going on, just like
Hmm.
in that darkness.
Yeah. There's a great like line in this movie when what's his name, Yof, the squire. When the squire's talking to the painter, and he's like, "Why do you paint like such grim things? Like, why don't you paint like happy stuff?" And the painter's just like, he's like, "I tell it like it is, man. It's like this is how the world is. It's he's basically
Oh,
he's like everything sucks. The world is life is pain and horror, and he's like that's why I have to paint it."
oh,
So,
so hey, you want to hear like a possibly pretentious take on that character,
uh-oh,
the
uh-oh,
of the painter? So
what?
I think of that painter. That's sort of Bergman, right? That
Yeah.
he is medieval Bergman, because the first thing is like, so he comes into the church, and there's
Mm,
the fresco walls, or the frescoes on the ceilings,
right.
and the first thing we see is like, oh, here's here's the dance of death. which,
Yeah.
okay, there's the dance of death. And then later on, there's like the flagellants also drawn on the other side. And it's sort of this like educational kind of capturing of stuff. But then I just started thinking about how this movie was viewed like traditionally, which would be in an art house cinema or a cinema, not an art house one necessarily. And like this whole idea of like people going to like a sort of like a gathering place, like the film goer church, which is the theater, and they're looking up on like basically these large walls of these projections of things like death. And like that's like the whole thing. Like my understanding that like the impetus for Bergman making this movie was him like dealing with his own like concerns about dying, his fear of death. And he basically just made this like morality play, kind of like almost fairy tale about that. And it's like, well, here's actually death as a guy. Like, here's someone that, or it's like I can kind of understand and picture death as this man in white makeup, wearing this black cloak, and he just like kind of sneaks around and appears out of the blue. And it's like, well, that is death.
No, yeah, I love like the interpretation of death. Like I too picture him as like just a frail old man, but like kind of weaselly. But I always picture death to have like skeleton hands and arms. So like he'll have a face like that guy, but like his hand would be like a skeleton hand because it'd be spookier, you know. Spooky. Yeah. Anyways, keep going.
So anyway, so yeah, like it's like that's about all I really got with my thought process on the Bergman as the fresco painter kind of figure. Because like in that, it's I think it's Jean's the squire.
Yeah.
He's sort of like, well, what's the point of this? You're just like going to send people to church or whatever. And the guy's like, well, that's not really my problem. I'm just here depicting what I'm depicting.
Yeah.
Like he's a visualist, I guess. Like he's there to like show the images, and these are the things that are like he's observing in the world around him, and like he's depicting them. And it's like people do with that with what they want. He's like he has no answers.
Right.
And I think that's kind of
he's
like
just telling it like it is.
yeah.
That's all.
I mean, that's kind of like what any artist really does at the end of the day. It's like, well, you make of it what you do, and go about your business.
Go about your business.
Please.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So like, Max von Sydow, he's sort of the, I guess like he's the Mifune or like De Niro to Bergman, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He's his guy.
He's pretty cool. I don't know if you saw, but he was in that new Star Wars movie. So I think he's got a pretty bright career ahead of him.
Didn't he?
He's an up and coming hot youngster, Max von Sydow. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Yeah. So this is kind of like another piece of apocalypse cinema too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea that like it's clearly medieval times, but I also like that it could be like the future, like after like a nuclear apocalypse, and it's just like wanderers and stuff like that. I think that would be cool too, and you could easily just plunk that down
RJ,
here.
I got some real talk here. When I first watched this movie, when I was probably in high school, that was like totally my takeaway. Was like,
oh really?
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I was like, yeah, no, it's like you could do the exact same type of thing. Like, cause like I think like the two characters of like Antonius Block and John's, like they have such a good like repertoire, and they're so basically it's like, how many times have we seen that character? Like it's like anime or like a manga thing where it's like sort of like the sarcastic kind of embittered like nihilist, and to like kind of the disillusioned kind of like high and mighty character who's kind of like fallen, like he doesn't know what he wants to do anymore, and it's like it would totally translate to like post-apocalyptic stuff. Like, oh, here's the body. Hey, buddy, what's going on? And you turn the body over, and it's a corpse.
Yeah, So like,
but instead of on horses, they're on motorcycles.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And mutants.
So like, mutants, slow mutants. The reason I think I thought about that too is going back, like like the Dark Tower. That's basically what it is, like, because that like the first books and like it continues on through the series, but like the world that the gunslinger is in, like it's a different world removed from this one, and like everyone in that world has like a phrase where they're like times moved on, so it's like this desolate western plain, but every now and then they'll like come across like old oil trucks and like machines and stuff like that, but it's like you get the impression that that stuff's been sitting for like thousands of years. Like no one knows how to use them anymore.
Oh yeah.
It's stuff like that. So
There is
it's a cool idea.
the anime too, like a Vampire Hunter D. It's like exactly that because it's like set
Mhm.
10,000 years in the future. And so like
Uh,
all of like our society's kind of gone away, but now it's kind of like gone into this weird like
mhm.
Victorian slash like yeah futuristic hybrid. And like
Yeah.
it's this, in that scenario you have like the Vampire Hunter D character, and then you have his other character who's actually in his hand, or I think it's
Ooh,
yeah, and it's like sort of like
sounds icky.
but they have the same sort of interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like kind of a weird trope I think that's in fiction, but yeah, it translates so well. I think it speaks to like kind of like that these things kind of transcending time.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
usually,
and that's
yeah,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like
yeah,
this movie's basically like timeless. Like that's what I meant. Like the conversations they have, like the ideas they bring up. Like I imagine people have always talked about those very same things, and like I think people always will. Like what is life? Like there's a I think Max von Sydow at one point he's like life is just senseless horror. And it's
yeah.
like I was like, yeah, man, you tell him, you tell him.
Oh yeah, him and his sad long face.
Fuck
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, no,
love.
there's just like or just scenes like when the woman like the she's like going to be burnt, and
Hmm.
like they're like, what does she see? What's going on in her eyes? And he's just like, there's nothing there, and it's just
You
like, yep,
You
that's
you know what I wrote down at that moment, Jarrett, that I
mm,
thought I'd bring up to you?
yeah,
I put Martyrs prequel? Question mark? Yeah. What do
yeah.
you see in those eyes, Jarrett?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you go, oh
Yeah.
boy, I'm gonna go and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go top myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But no, yeah, like even all that stuff I think is fucking awesome. Like I love like you kind of said like that dark gothic horror types things like witches and plagues and like stuff like that. Like when the actors get interrupted by like the March of the Damned, that scene is so fucking good.
yeah,
Like where it's just like people uh like you said like whipping themselves. There's like lepers that like can't even walk, and then there's that one dude who just comes out and basically like tells everybody like what's wrong with them. He's like, you there with the fat face. It's like you're a fat loser and you're gonna die alone. He just tells
yeah.
everyone like their problems or like what's wrong with them, and then like to cap it all off, he's just like, and everybody's gonna fucking die. He's like, so none of this even matters. Like that whole sequence is just awesome. I think
Yeah.
it's I don't
Well, yeah, I mean it's such a play against the type of that type of character too, where it's like
know.
in
Hmm.
like your historical depictions, I guess you'd have these like very loving sort of like priestly figures, but it's like no,
Yeah.
like some of these people are just like these are like man, imagine being like a rural kid who's like been taught how to read and write, and then like you're now like out there and you've been thinking about like God and the world, and you see what the world is.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're gonna have a pretty harsh, brutal reality of like the way things are, and like you're gonna be part of like this like monk priest class, and like you're gonna be above it all, and you're there to save people. You're going to talk a particular way, and I think it's like a more realistic depiction here in the Seventh Seal than usually you would get.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that's kind of
yeah,
why I like it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny too that I mentioned like the devils earlier,
Hmm.
and then now we're talking about Seven Seal because like there's like both so much in the same space for me. It's like depictions of like just madness in
Yeah.
like this in like one of my favorite backdrops that you're kind of you pre 18th century Europe, where it's just like
Hmm.
dirty, filthy, scummy, miserable, wet. Like it always seems like it's
Yeah.
like wet. It's raining or something like that, and you're trudging through
Hmm.
mud, and like, well, we don't have motors yet, so we have to walk every step of the way the
Hmm.
rest of our lives until we die, and then we're going to have children, and they're going to continue doing the exact same thing. It's like part of this
Yeah.
like march in progress through time, and it's just like, oh yeah, we have it better now than we've ever had before, and we kind of lose sight of
Hmm.
that on a regular basis. And so,
Oh
like, yeah,
yeah.
once again, this film does a excellent job of creating a sense of space and time that, yeah, it's like totally convincing.
Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, and there's
Yeah.
like yeah, there's like all these like speeches and like monologues and dialogues in the movie. They're all
Hmm.
like variously important, I guess, to like these things that Bergman's probably having in his own head or with his own like circle
Hmm.
of friends or family,
Yeah.
and just like It's real. It's real talk, I guess.
Yeah, real talk. Well, so
Yeah.
like I first saw this movie like a year or two ago, and I really dug it then too. And so like I looked into this Bergman guy. I want to see what else this guy was into, and like I saw like particularly with this movie, like I guess it's a theme in all his stuff, but like what he was saying, he's like he because his dad was like a super strict Catholic, like as you see in Fanny and Alexandra, I guess, and we'll get there, but like how he was kind of like raised like that, and then when he was older he didn't really know what to believe, and like that's kind of I think that really shows in his work, like especially through like Max von Sydow's character where he's talking about like blind faith and stuff like that. He's like how can he's like it's not enough to like believe in something that is never like responsive, and like
Yeah.
the silent god and stuff like that. And I think that stuff's all really cool, and it shows a lot in his work. And I just remembered one thing actually that's kind of interesting is I guess like when Bergman was younger, he like his parents or like also did like a funeral home type of thing, or like I don't know if it was like a church thing, but like I remember reading somewhere that like he had to carry corpses around as like a little kid, and
Huh.
like that some of that like came back in the movie. And the only reason I bring that up is because that's like when I was talking about that movie, I Am Not a Serial Killer, is like the kid works in like a funeral home and he's dealing with corpses. So I guess it could have been Bergman.
Could have been
Could have been him.
Bergman. He could have been a killer.
He could have been hanging out with Christopher Lloyd right now if he
Mm.
had played his cards right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Not being dead.
not being dead.
Yep.
Ingmar,
Oh, Ingmar. Big Ing.
Big Ing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, another thing with this movie too is like, if you like read about this movie on paper, it doesn't
Mhm.
sound like it's a good time at all. But the
No.
movie's actually got like, it's really punctuated with like some like humor and like, just like kind of like, I think I mentioned before, like this, like these pastoral scenes, and it seems like it's like not that bad. Like there's like enough there to like, I guess, get you through the rest of your life. Like when you're like,
Yep.
if you were living in this scenario, and like the stuff with like the blacksmith and his wife and stuff like that. I mean, that's all like not Pilgrim's Progress, but like just like that's like beckons back to like yeah, like old poems and stuff like that, and like
Mhm.
they're just like oh yeah, that old chestnut of
Chestnut.
getting cuckolded by your
Wandering
wife and
wives.
stuff like that. Yeah, it's all hilarious, and oh, he's gonna kill you.
Mhm.
He's gonna cave your head in. Ha.
hmm I have two things that I wrote down that I really liked about like those specific characters. Number one, have you ever seduced somebody with a chicken wing, Jarrett?
Can't say as I have yet.
Well, you're not really living then, I guess.
No.
So I thought that was really cool. And then the blacksmith guy later, when he meets back up with them, he threatens to kill a guy by farting on him. And I think that's fucking amazing to have had happened in a very fancy black and white 1950s movie to have a guy basically say, "Hey man, I'll fucking fart and you'll die." How about that?
Yeah, that's
So
that's groundbreaking.
yeah, I didn't just have that as a note. I had an arrow to it instead of just a single tab because I thought it was that important.
Yeah.
So,
As I mentioned in my synopsis, that tree sawing scene, that's like the one thing I really remember about this movie more
hmm
than like, the dance of death along the hill with the sun
yeah,
coming up against them,
hmm
or death appearing at the beginning. Yeah, no, that
hmm
that thing is like the weirdest, funniest thing because it's like
it's
it's
so funny.
because it's like, oh, it's death. And oh, he's
Yeah.
got a saw with them. And the guy's like, what are you doing down there? And he's like, oh, it's time for you to die. And it's like, it's like, that's it. It's just like, oh, this is like, goes into like almost like Looney Tunes like territory where it's like, he's like
Yeah,
Bugs Bunny
yeah, it definitely is, and
and like Elmer
it,
Fudd.
yeah, and it's like you said, it's so funny. Like the fact that he just comes up with that thing, and the guy's like, "Well, can I stop?" He's like, "Nah." He's like, "It's just gonna happen." And yeah, that scene's super funny. And then I have another note, and it just says, "I like that squirrel." So when that tree
Oh,
actually
yeah.
falls down, a really bushy-eared squirrel comes up, and I think that squirrel's pretty cool.
Apparently that was legit too.
Like it was Bergman's squirrel.
Well, it was a squirrel on site.
It looked like a real squirrel.
No, it was one
Yeah,
of those weird squirrels we don't get over here in North America.
bushy ear squirrels.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. I like that squirrel.
Yeah. Good job, squirrel.
Yeah, you did it, man.
He did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was kind of looking around a little bit, reading about this movie too, and I guess some actual like historians have some issue with the inaccuracies of Bergman's medieval world.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah, well, this thing is like, well, the Crusades, they were actually kind of like a more optimistic time, and they wrapped up like several decades before like the doom and gloom presented here, but
Yeah, sure. More optimistic. Like, yeah, okay. Why don't you go back there and, like you said, get fucking trench foot and like just wading through mud your whole life and tell me that it's optimistic or that you're having a good time.
yeah, I was like, oh,
So,
the
yeah.
Black Plague didn't actually happen when it said it did. And it's like,
Oh, fuck off.
yep. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. It's like trivial things that like don't matter. It's
Hmm.
like it's like I nitpick about things like, in Batman movies, why doesn't he show his abs more? Like, but deep down, it doesn't really matter. Only to me. So
Yeah,
these guys just need to chill out.
yeah,
That's what I think.
absolutely.
You know what I would have qualms with more than the historical depiction, the depiction of that guy claiming to self-proclaimed juggler. That's the laziest fucking juggling I've ever seen in my entire life. That's the only problem I have with this movie is like the guy's like not much pay here for a juggler, and he only has two balls, and he just throws one at a time. He throws it up with his right hand, and then he grabs the ball in his left hand with his right hand, and then catches with the left. Like that's not juggling. He's just throwing balls in the air. So if you're gonna, my point I guess is if you're gonna take like any part of this movie to like get mad about or like have problems with, it's the juggling. That's it.
That's it. Yeah,
That's it.
you're putting the juggling on notice.
That's fucking right, man.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
You go, girl.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess like other thing I guess I could bring up is just like so this movie was kind of like the OG of art house cinema in North America.
Okay.
Like so when it started showing up in I guess New York and stuff like that, this movie was like people were like really like, what is this? Because it's like
Hmm.
not. I mean, we haven't really seen too many American 1950s movies so far on the Criterion Creep, but I mean I've
Hmm.
seen them in my own time, and like yeah, like this movie would be probably pretty like strange for a lot of people. Because I mean, like at this point, like this, like so, along with like Seven Samurai, Seventh Seal, like these are like the two movies that really like opened up. I think a lot of like the directors that like we still talk about in the 70s. These were the movies that people were watching for the first time and just like they were like, holy
Hmm.
crap. Like this is like I don't even know what this is. Like it's kind of like it's like off and like but it's beautifully shot, black and white, and they're just telling stories completely differently. Everything
Hmm.
seems a bit more like naturalistic, which is kind of strange when you're talking about a movie about death walking around and like
Hmm.
playing chess with people. It's like, well, that doesn't seem naturalistic at all, but it's like it comes off that way, which I
Yeah.
guess is again
I
a
think it's
credit to Bergman as
yeah.
a compositor of people and putting stuff
Hmm.
together and making it all work together.
It's totally believable. Like there's not a point in this movie where I don't believe what's going on. Yeah, like all that stuff. It works great.
Yeah, no, it's
Hmm.
I don't know, like I don't know if I have that much more to say about Seven Steel, just because it's just like what more can I add or think? Like it seems like it's
Hmm.
all pretty self-explanatory or whatever.
Yeah.
I checked out the commentary track by my main man Peter Cowie,
Oh
who
no.
it's his reappearance, him rearing his head since our first episode where he did the commentary on Grand Illusion. The
Hmm.
one thing that stood out on that for me was like he seems like weird. Like so, it was recorded in 1987, and he seems like weirdly insecure about the film's reputation and Bergman's reputation. Like he keeps saying, like in this scene here, as they approach a church, audiences have been known to groan as because it's like, oh, it's a Bergman movie with another church. I'm just like,
Shut
I
up.
don't know, like what sort of people Peter Cowie went to movies with, like, but it's like
Yeah.
maybe you should get some new friends or like I don't know. I think time, like it seemed like the movie like almost had like a period of time where it had fallen out of favor or just seemed a little
Hmm.
like too corny or something like that. But I don't know. I think that that period of time was passed over really fast because
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really see too many people hating on this movie, though I do have some who hates this movie choice
Ooh.
reviews. If unless you have
Uh,
more things you might want to comment on.
Um, no, it's like you said. I think it's all there. The only thing I did want to say is that I forgot to mention when we're talking about the way death looks. I wrote down Q from TNG.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Okay.
That's all. I just wanted to make that little comparison there so people know.
Very well.
Anyways, yeah. I was just also putting it off because I don't want to hear about people who hate this movie because they suck.
Okay. Well, we're going to hear
Yep.
from people who hate this movie. Half a star from Zeke Taylor. A movie founded
Ugh.
upon the notion that the universe is grounded in nothing ends up amounting to little more than nothing. There are movies that are founded on something and end up amounting to something, indicating that behind the universe there may in fact be something.
What?
Yep.
What? I don't understand. Am I dumb? I don't understand that at all.
I think it boils down to this person is just like on a philosophical level opposed to what Bergman's laying down.
Shut up.
1.5 star rating from Ignisalage. First Bergman, not really impressed.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's it. It's that guy again.
One
Not
and-
really.
Not
Yeah.
impressed.
Not impressed.
1.5 star rating from Ben. Why do you paint such nonsense to remind people they're going to die? The Seventh Seal is a disgustingly verbose, self-involved, contrived film with a lame premise and the goofiest portrayal of anything evil I've ever seen. I almost faked my death halfway through to get out of it.
That's dumb. That's so stupid. Like, what does he? What does he want for portrayals of evil? Like Krampus from that hit movie Krampus from last year. Like,
Krampus
not
as seen
in-
in Krampus.
yeah, as in Krampus, like contrived dribble. Fuck off. That's dumb.
And then there was actually quite a few people. But here's a 1.5 star rating from Grapsta. It's hilarious that even the people who sound like they really didn't enjoy it feel like they still have to give it 4 stars. Personally, nothing resonated and I was bored. Gave up halfway through.
Jeez. Well, he's doing is hurting himself from good things. Giving up like that, man, it could maybe the dance macabre at the end would have changed his life. Who knows?
Maybe he
Who
should
knows?
dance his way to death.
Yeah, he didn't even see the squirrel if he left halfway.
Or no tree chopping, no witch burning.
Silly, silly, silly.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'll throw this one out there. So I've been scoping out those Roger Ebert great movie reviews on the movies we've been watching, and like one thing that I found like incredible with old Roger Ebert is like he just gets like factual information wrong a lot. And I mean,
Okay.
like he just like
It's like us.
yeah, like us. We're up there too, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
no, there's just like things where he'll say like certain characters are in cages when it's like no, they weren't in a cage in that scene. But he'll just say that. And I mean, I get that like he was probably writing about 4 or 5 reviews a week at a time. And
Yeah.
so he when you watch a movie say in the theater, like you write your notes down and like you're kind of maybe half remembering stuff when you're putting it down and you can't go back because your job's live. But like I'm assuming when he wrote his Seventh Seal review, he had a copy of it like on hand and
Yeah.
he'd be able to maybe fact check this stuff, or like his editors would like, I mean they can't necessarily go to the movies to fact check him either, but like it's a constant thing in his stuff. Like it's like not like once in a while. It's like pretty consistent. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if anyone's ever thought about bringing that up to him. Obviously now the point is moot, but I don't know. I'm going to keep an eye on that, and I will be bringing it up as I notice the Roger Ebert like factual inaccuracies.
Okay.
'Cause
that can be a new segment.
Yeah. What did Roger Ebert say about a movie that was not actually accurate at all?
Yeah, just to pile shit on his grave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, all right.
All right. Well, yeah. Anything else?
No, man, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I like this movie. It's really good.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd say that it's like, yeah, it's in the top echelons of the stuff we've watched so far.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
I put it
hopefully,
on par with Seven Samurai.
yeah,
For me,
yeah.
I put them both at. They both have top spot right now. If they could be shared.
Mm-hmm. All
So
right. Well, I think that's it.